always forget. All right, so today we need to solidify all groups, which I think we just did. Please check the choose your topic discussion thread so that you know which group you're doing so you can start doing your research. This is the last week to finalize research topics because then we're jumping right into the specific research, gathering research articles that'll fulfill kind of the specific topic you're doing so you can start building on it so no one is stuck at the last minute. Okay, the goal for today will be talking about the literature review and what are my expectations and what it should look like. I feel like students always want to know, like, what are the meat and potatoes? What do I need to know to get the A on this paper? And I recognize that every professor is a little bit different. So let me share my screen real quick so that you know where I'm getting this information from. So on our Course Connect page, which hopefully you see, right? Everybody sees this? Okay. I will be talking about the example literature review, which is right here in like the announcement section. So you can feel free to open that later on. And I will also be discussing this literature review how-to, okay? So we'll spend some time on that as well. But before we go there, I want to talk about a slight syllabus schedule change. It's not going to change a whole lot. In our syllabus, week 6 was the exam, so that is not changing. It is still going to be week 6, which for us will be February 24th. The following week, though, I still had it as a break, which we are not sadly having a break. So it's going to be lecture, and we're going to be covering the chapter on sampling. So that's what this is here. So that'll be week 7, and then week 8, which is March 10th, which feels like forever from now, like a month, but it'll go by fast. That is the day you guys are going to be doing the qualitative research experiment, and we will not be having class. Your task will be to go out in the community safely, mask up, distance, all the things. But you will be doing your qualitative research assessment. We are going to talk more about that as it gets closer. Fear not. But I wanted to give you guys a quick update since there's a little shuffling around of our syllabus. So questions, comments, concerns about that?
I have a question about the literature review, but I might leave it till after just because we haven't gotten into it. I just am in another capstone class where we're doing like the research and the methods and the data collection and all that.
Yep.
So
okay,
well, more afterwards.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe as we go through and discuss the literature review, that maybe organically I'll answer that question for you. If sure. I don't, though, please do bring it up again because I'm sure you're not the only one who will have that question.
Got it.
Okay, so I want to spend some time on this tab. Can you guys see this if I switch the tab over?
Yep.
Okay, this is the USC document. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I like to spend a little bit of time as to what to expect, well, first off, students tell me they like that. You want to know, what is it I need to do so I'm successful and I produce a great paper? But there's also multiple definition as to what is a literature review. And so it behooves me to tell you how I define it and then what are my expectations so that you guys can work toward the same kind of product that I'm expecting. This is a document that I found several years back that I think is very helpful in defining the different types of literature reviews, but also like some things to look out for and what is a literature review not, so that you're not getting that confused. So I guess I should open it up. When you hear literature review, how do you imagine that looking? Like what's a, yeah.
Like, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's like your knee jerk, this is what I think it is, but yeah.
In like, I would kind of group it with the introduction. So this is like our research regarding, you know, like in our topic, we're doing how students are coping with the online learning. So what is other relevant like scholarly articles regarding that topic that has existed before?
Okay, good.
Introduction to the topic.
Okay, Great. What do others think?
I had to write one last semester, and I just know we had to get like 15 to 20 sources.
Okay.
Does ours have to be that big?
I say 10 to 15, so way smaller, not a big deal.
Okay.
So yeah, so Ashley, I'm hearing you have to go and look in the literature and find salient articles that you'll be discussing in your paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Like comparing like what different sources say to like come up with one answer.
Okay, so there's some inherent maybe compare and contrast within the paper. Okay. Okay, so you guys are all along the same page. All you got the right idea. So the main thing to remember is a literature review is literally what it says. It's a review of the literature as it pertains to your topic. It cannot, by definition, and especially for this class, it will not be exhaustive, meaning every single study that's ever been done on online learning is included in my research, right? We're not doing that. If you're at a different level in your academic career, perhaps you would want to do a meta-analysis where you're looking at all those, but that is beyond the scope of this class. Having said that, we still need to have appropriate breadth and depth of topic. By that, I mean, you cannot simply research and pull articles that were written in the 1970s on social communication and you're like, done, finish that, right? What would be inherently wrong or problematic or faulty with a research paper that describes social interactions and only pulled articles from the 70s?
It's not current.
Yeah, it's not current. And what might be missing?
Modern elements like in communication, online learning wasn't a thing.
Yeah, or this little guy that we all talk to all the time. So if we don't have access to that, then we are not doing a good job of showing good breadth and depth of the topic, and that's problematic. So going here from the website, the literature review can look at books. It can be published books, scholarly articles, and it includes here any other source relevant to a particular issue. I will say for our class, you are going to focus on scholarly articles. There may be an instance or two where you'll include a book, and that's perfectly appropriate. Any other source relevant, that's not really going to fly as well in this particular domain. That would work maybe in more like experimentation for drugs if you had past evidence or like laboratory data from a pharmaceutical company, you could include that as adjunctive research. But for the purpose of this class, that's not what we're going to do. So it's going to be mostly published research articles. And then again, your goal is to be providing a description or summary and a critical evaluation as to how all of those relate together towards your interest topic of research. That's what we're working toward. Okay. All right. This is big. We are going to be working towards summarizing the articles, but what I liked that I didn't hear from all of you is that our literature review is not just in Johnson and Smith. They had 400 participants. They discovered a significant difference between this, and that. In Wu and Sanchez, they had 200 and then you just do brief synopsis of each research study. That is not a literature review according to my definition of it. What that is to me is an annotated bibliography where you are just doing a very short summary of each paper. What I'm looking for is for you guys to integrate and come up with some meaningful connections, or as McKenna was talking about, I believe earlier, compare, contrast, see how they're similar, see how they're different, and then insert yourself as a critically thinking academician as to what you think that means, okay? So it is not simply a summary, we are integrating, okay? So A summary here is a recap of the important information of the source, which you will need. We do need some information on the study and how it was conducted, but it's also a synthesis and reorganization so that information informs you on how you're developing your research project. So you are integrating and synthesizing multiple pieces of research to kind of give your audience a so what moment, right? This study said that, this study said that, this study said, okay, well, so what? What does it all mean? Pull it all together, right? Explain to the reader. So again, you should see this writing exercise as walking your audience through, almost telling them a story from the beginning to the end as to what is it you are researching? Why is it what does it matter? What are some salient points you need to keep in mind, and keep it along that way?
Could I ask a quick question?
Of course, Elizabeth, go ahead.
So, like, I'm sorry if this is a dumb question,
No
but
dumb questions.
but for the so like with the literature review, I was a little bit confused about how, like what percentage of the paper it might be. So if I'm doing like or if we do at least like a 7 to 10 page paper, would the literature review be integrated like in a little bit in the intro and then throughout the paper, talking about, so here's my source, and then incorporate my own data?
Great question. So length of paper, that always like bogs me down. And I know you guys want to know, so you know what to shoot for. Know that it's not super important to me. The literature review will have one paragraph will be a very quick introduction. This is why I'm interested in this topic, something like that. Here's how they're related. And I'll show you again an example in a minute that'll bring it home.
Okay.
And then your literature review comes right after. And if you think, actually, let me take a step back. Any published paper that you review will have those exact same elements in the order. They'll have a brief introduction, then they'll have a review of the literature, and then they'll have their methodology, their results, and their discussion. We're going to be covering those exact same headings, but right now we're focusing on this first part, the literature review, which is you going through past studies and integrating what's been discovered with past data. So to your question as to how many pages, I'm telling students usually your intro is going to be one paragraph, maybe you're looking at 3 to 4 sentences, and then your literature review should be about 4 to 6 pages.
Okay.
Your methodology section is going to be very short, like maybe a total of 1 page. Because you're going to say,
Sorry, go ahead.
the methodology, it's far more prescriptive in terms of writing, and we'll get to that in a few weeks, but it'll be, I want this many participants, I'm going to get them from Facebook, I'll ask them to participate, and I'm going to give them this survey, which has been validated and shown to be reliable.
So basically the literature review is its own thing, and our methodology and our research is going to come later. We're not going to be relating the literature review to our methods and
No.
data necessarily. Okay.
No. So it's intro, literature review, methodology. Result is literally going to be your stats. So it's going to be a short section that just says, here's what we found. There were a total of 30 guys and 60 girls and range this age, all that. You're going to give your data. And then the last piece is your discussion, which that's going to be a little longer, usually 2 to 3 pages, which is what happened with your study. What did you find out? And then a few sentences of conclusion. So that's the whole paper as a whole. But for the purpose of the literature review, this is what you're looking for. You're going to figure out when you're researching specific article, as you read them, how are they connected? What do they have in common? What's bubbling up as a similarity, so that you can start organizing your paper with some subheadings. And I'll go over that in just a minute.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, part of the purpose of the literature review, as it states right here, it's to place each work in the context of understanding the research problem that's being studied. It's to describe the relationship of each work to others that are under consideration, to identify new ways of interpreting prior research. And I'd like to underline that. If you guys find a research article and you're like, they're telling me that this is what they're walking away in terms of the results and what they think it means, but I'm seeing it kind of this other way. This often will happen if you've got a study that you're including that does not have significant findings. The researchers then create a new hypothesis, like we think we didn't have, significant findings because of X, Y, and Z. You may have a completely novel idea as something that may be going on there with their particular sample. So it's perfectly appropriate for you to include that as well. Again, the purpose is to also reveal any gaps that's missing in the existing literature, to resolve conflicts between contradictory studies. Again, you want to make sure that you're finding the area that is going to be for future research, which we can talk about later. But it's really centering your study, your question, within a backdrop of other studies that have already taken place and that are seminal to your topic. Okay. That's kind of the purpose of why we do it. There are multiple types of literature review, as I mentioned before. The one we will focus on is the integrative review. So this is the section you want to pay attention to. Quick stepping back, we are not doing a historical review because that would be going back in time and finding every single article that related to this and then put it in chronological order. We're not doing that. We're not going to argue different viewpoints because it's not a philosophical debate. You're really looking at evidence-based research. And then we're not going to look at a specific methodology and combine it that way because there's multiple ways to access the data. So integrative makes the most sense. So it reviews, critiques, and synthesizes representative literature on a topic in an integrated way such that new frameworks and perspectives on the topics are generated. So again, you are bringing things together, finding commonality between them, and you are going to use that commonality to organize your literature review.
I have a question about the integrative.
Yep.
So I wrote an argumentative one, and we weren't allowed to use our voice in, the discussion. So how does that work in the integrative review?
You can absolutely use your voice. That's actually a point I make later.
Okay.
No, it's a great question. Yeah, so one example of integrative review would be, I'm curious as to what leads to college student success in their first year of college. So I want to know, what is predictive of college success? So I'm going to look to the literature and see what has been said about it. And perhaps there's some people who say, well, if a student has their parents and siblings, they've all gone to college, there's almost this cultural expectation maybe that they'll do well in college as well. Maybe there's other articles that state, well, it's just based on intelligence, right? If you're intelligent, you'll do well. So, and you get your intelligence from your parents. So thanks, mom and dad. This is whether I'm going to do well or not. There's others that may say it's pervasive personality traits, right? Well, only students who are really perseverant and determined and kind of that type A personality can be successful in college. And it's due to these kind of constant aspects of their personality that leads them to success. Well, although I've talked about 3 different things, all of them could be clumped together and put under a heading that maybe was called nurture or biological factors or inherited traits. You know what I mean? They kind of have that similarity through it. They involve the generation before. So even though they're different ideas and they're different predictors of college success, they all kind of, if you look at the common denominator, it has kind of the biology or the inherited aspect. So that could become a subheading. So that as I'm organizing my data and I'm curious about college success and where it goes from, then I have all those articles that fall under inherited traits go together, which means if somebody is successful or not really has little to do with either their scores on an SAT or ACT test or their social connectedness on campus and how many extracurricular activities, that's separate. That may be other subheadings, but these studies are really pushing for more of an inherited trait as to one being successful. So I use that as an example. Obviously, you guys will have different ideas, but see how I was able to see the common denominator and I would group all those articles under that subheading. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's the idea of an integrative review. Again, there are several different types. Feel free to read them if you're interested. You don't have to. Okay. You are going to be, when you're looking at the structure of it, you're trying to divide the works into themes, just like I was describing, like these subheadings. So themes are categories. And then you want to provide an explanation as to how they are each similar or different from another. So that's a compare contrast. And then at the end of that section, have kind of a tie the bow statement as to what's the take home message about that specific theme or category. Okay. Okay. This goes a little too deep for what we're doing, but yeah, it's just part of it. Okay. Development. No, I think we can skip all that. Okay, here. Ways to organize your literature review. Again, I kind of have said this multiple times, but this is important. There's multiple ways you can go about doing it, as you can see. We are going to focus on this thematic or conceptual categories. So again, find a way to see in your 10 to 15 articles what is bubbling up as common between all of them, or between some of them, that shows distinct categories. And that'll serve as almost like a container for what's going to come below it or after it. So that's how we're going to be running it. Again, thematic. Oh my goodness. I just got spammed on a text message. I don't think that's happened to me before. Okay. So that's the thematic categorization. All right, now you're getting to the point where you're writing your review. What do you need to keep in mind? Well, first you need to use evidence. That should be of no surprise, right? So you need to make sure that you're using your source, that you're using in-text citation and asterisk, comma, underline. If you have something that is cited in text, it should be in your reference page. Vice versa, if it's in your reference page, it better be somewhere in your actual writing. There's always a student or two who I go through and I'm like, wait, I'm actually interested in the study and it's not in the references. So make sure that you spend some time to just double check that. That's a quick check. Be selective. Okay, so the first job that you'll have in the next couple of weeks will be to find and accumulate 10 to 15 research articles. Now I know how this goes. All of you are going to look through, you're going to research, and then you're going to read mostly the abstract to give you a snapshot as to what the study is about. And then you'll go yay or nay, like very thin, Tinder style, right? Nope, no, don't want it. Yes, want it. But you'll get to a point where you actually read the whole study, right? Yes, please. And once you do, you may recognize, this is not at all what I thought this was about. And in fact, this is not a good fitting study for my literature review. But hey, I submitted it to Dr. Woltzel already, so I guess now I'm committed. Incorrect. Do not force, again, a square peg in a round hole, or the other way around. Like, don't force it. If it doesn't fit, then just ditch it. This is why I say 10 to 15. So if you start and you're right there at 14 and you have to ditch 2, you're still fine. But if you find 10 and now you're ditching 5, that is not going to be a broad or deep enough analysis of the literature. So you want to stay within that 10 to 15 final articles. Okay. Use quotes sparingly. I feel like I have died already on that hill with you guys and talked about this, but the goal is for you guys, in your own words, with your own voice, to share what you think is going on with a specific study. Now, there are times where you have to quote. Totally fine. You don't need to come up with like the best synonyms to say something that would be better stated in clear terms by the original author. Totally fine. But that does not mean straight copy and paste. In an article by Wu and Su, they discovered, insert, open quotation marks, 9 sentences, close quotation marks. There is no digestion of information there from you guys. I cannot assess whether you understand the material, whether you've grappled with it and actually understood it. That does not fly. So let me read this. Some short quotes are okay if you want to emphasize a point or if what the author has stated cannot be easily paraphrased. Sometimes you may need to quote certain terminology that was coined by the author, not common knowledge or taken directly from the study. Do not use extensive quotes as a substitute for your own summary and interpretation of the literature. Okay, that's said way nicer than what I was just saying, but boils down to the same thing. Okay, remember that you are working on summarizing and synthesizing the articles that you've gathered, and you're trying to provide, if you were explaining to your grandma, here's the research I've done on stress or finances during COVID, right? She would want to know past studies and what that looked like. So you do need to provide a summary, but then you need to figure out the so what, like what does that mean and why do we care? And how does it tie with other research? Okay. Keep your own voice. So Ashley, this goes directly to your question. It is meant to be your voice. So you are providing information on past studies and what they have done. But ultimately, I want to know, what do you think? Do you think it was a salient study? Was it effective? Were there significant limitations? Are there areas of improvements for the study? Like all of that can come from your own voice, not the original authors. And then use caution when you're paraphrasing. Make sure that the meaning of what you're trying to describe didn't get distorted through your paraphrasing. Because again, we're not trying to do that, right? So, all right. So common mistakes that we need to watch out for. It's often people will pick sources that, like I mentioned earlier, don't really tie in with your research question. So you've got one that's kind of curving off tangentially here into right field. Try to keep it close-knit and all related to one another. If you don't take sufficient time to define and identify the most relevant sources, that's going to be another issue. If you're just throwing stuff together last minute, it's going to show and it's going to be a poor paper. You want to focus on primary source, not secondary analysis. You want to make sure you are critically looking at their research findings and not just accepting them at face value. You are all very intelligent people. I want to know what you think, not just what the authors think. Yeah, the rest kind of all applies. Okay.
Now, quick
Yeah.
question. What is there a certain term to use to find the primary study to how do I look at that up efficiently?
So what you want to do is go to one of the research database that you have access through Aquinas and then type in a topic. And then you want to make sure the primary source is just the people who wrote the paper did the study.
Okay.
So almost every single thing you find in a research database, it's going to be a primary source. Now, if you go on Google and you you're like online learning and COVID, well, you might have a lot of secondary analysis that are based on that original article, kind of like what Goldacre was saying in his video, his TED Talk, where he's like, you just grab one tiny sentence that you may have heard or read, and then you extrapolate it into something big. Well, that may have nothing to do with what the primary research actually stated. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about this? Oh, good question, McKenna. You are gathering these articles on your own. You are not doing that part as a group. So the groups, you guys are together for ease of data gathering. That's really the only reason why you're in a group rather than alone. Each student is responsible to write their own paper. Now, you may be 2 students in a group and you have 15 completely different research articles. That's fine. There's no problem there. In fact, it's going to be a little bit of a red flag to me if 2 students in the same group have almost an identical paper with all the same resources, right? The topics you guys have chosen are broad enough and diverse enough that there should be plenty to choose from in the literature. So your intro literature review will all look very similar, or will all be your own. I mean, there'll be some similarities, obviously, because the topic is the same, but those are your own. You're writing it on your own. The methodology and results section, those are going to look very similar between your group members because what is it you're doing, right? How you're gathering data and which instrument you're using, that's going to be the same in your group. It's still, you're writing it on your own. There's not one person writing it and everybody copy and paste. You're writing on your own, but it's going to have the same information. I decided to use the Beck Depression Inventory to assess levels of satisfaction and depression within college students. And I gathered the data from Facebook. Well, those facts are all going to be the same for everybody in your group. And then the results are all going to be the same because you have the same data. And so the way you analyze it, that's the numbers should not change. They will be the same. Now, the way you report it, and then obviously subsequently your discussion and conclusion, that will be different. That'll be your own writing and your own interpretation. Does that help, McKenna, with your question? My chat window keeps closing. Yes. Okay, good. All right, so let me stop sharing this real quick. And let's now go to, where are we? Oh, it's right here. Blind. I want to open up the example lit review. Oakley, no. Oh my gosh, can you guys hear him? He's so loud.
Maybe I heard the couple thuds, but other than that.
All right, can you guys see this Word document? Okay. So this is to give you an idea on a paper that was pretty successful. This is specifically just the literature review. So here's the introduction. Concussions in sports amongst professional athletes have long been known to have potential for serious long-term effects. When looking at the transition period into adulthood that is college life, the continued brain development that is still taking place into the mid-20s, and considering how much stress typical students are under while they learn to juggle multiple classes and competing demands, it is no surprise that concussions can adversely affect and impact a student's ability to manage stress and anxiety. Okay, boom. Intro done. What is this student researching?
Concussions.
Okay, concussions and?
Correlation between concussions and being able to adapt to college life.
Okay, very close. Yeah, so there's a correlation exactly between concussion and a student. So that last line here, a student's ability to manage stress and anxiety, right? So that's what they did. They utilized the tool that looked at stress and stress management, how effective they were. They looked specifically at athletes and they asked them if they had an instance of previous concussion. Okay, so this is a good idea of what an intro should look like. So you have, I mean, she could have broken down that second sentence into 2 or 3 sentences, but you get the gist. Like right away, your reader knows this is what's going to be studied. I'm getting it. Now, she then gathered her research, and first theme or category she created was cognitive effects. So if you could think of a concussion, there's going to be several cognitive impact from that concussion. So she synthesized and integrated research articles here specifically on cognitive effects. Then she talked about emotional effects and had multiple articles this way here about it as well. Then she talked about physical effects and talked about these. Now, this paper is a little bit short. It's only, 3, almost 4 pages. I would say 4 to 6 is what you're aiming for, but you get a sense here. There's no in this study, la 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 la. In this study, la 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 la. She instead gathered the articles and put them under these categories or themes that emerge as being salient after with the impact of a concussion. Does that make sense?
Yes. So there can be like multiple, oh, okay. Sorry, I'm answering my own question, I guess. So there can be multiple articles under like emotional effects.
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, great question. You need to have multiple questions under each subheading. Otherwise, that category is not really a category, it's just describing one study, right? So if we're going to have it be a category, it needs to be looking at more than one. Any other questions? Okay. All right. If you guys are curious as to how to access this again, I want to make sure everyone can see where you have access to it because you can look at it a few more times. If you go on our class Course Connect page, right here, example lit review, and you can read it, see if you have any questions about it. And then the article or the page I had up was the literature review how-to right over here. Okay. So for the rest of today, I hate doing this, but I think I need to make a quick 10-minute break. So I've been chugging tea and I need to have a nature moment. So let's come back at 2. Let's make it even. How's that sound?
Sounds
Okay.
great.
See you all at 2.